Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of the Friday Market Update. I think you're going to like this one. So let's get started. So let's do the two-step. Two steps forward and two steps back. And it's like a broken record where my favorite Rolling Stone song keeps skipping at the same place. I always thought I fixed it by cleaning. I'd get the record, I'd wipe it, I'd wipe it. And every time it would skip at the same exact place. So then I clean it again and it never changed. So maybe there was actually something wrong with my record. So maybe it was clean after all, but it just had a flawed record groove that couldn't be fixed. So that's sometimes how I feel about mortgage rates. We keep seeing signs that the consumer is struggling, inflation is slowing down, but we just can't get over that skip, that hump, and have that sustained rally that's will make interest rates go down. So now there's good news, and there's always good news. So we got to make sure that we keep that in our mind, is that interest rates pretty much went sideways this week, settling in right around 7% pretty much the whole week. So and that's for 30-year fixed conventional loan, according to Mortgage News Daily, my favorite website that nobody really likes, but it's a great resource to track everything mortgage. So some of the data that came out this week showed retail sales coming in out below expectations. The consumer just isn't buying as much. Jobless claims continue to remain high, and the leading economic index declined for the 25th month out of the last 26 months reported. Is something really going on there? Is the economy as strong as everybody or the government seems to think? I don't know. The weak economic data almost always leads to lower rates. So what gives? So let's talk about this. Interestingly enough, too much government spending has kept rates high. I don't want to get political, but I'm going to go into a little bit deeper on this, and this is where I get a geek out. So you hear about the government deficit. Most people have no idea what this means, let alone what the word deficit means. So I'm going to explain it. A government deficit really happens when the government spends more money than it collects in taxes. Let me say that again. The government deficit happens when the government spends more money than it collects in taxes. So imagine if you got a $50 week allowance, but you spent $60 every week, you'd be short $10. That shortfall is called a deficit, and it's like a government deficit. So you would have to borrow the $10 to make up that amount, that deficit. So let's talk about the current government deficit in 2024. So as of this year, the US government deficit is approximately 1.5 trillion dollars. So this means that the government is spending 1.5 trillion more than it is collecting in taxes. So how are government bonds and interest rates connected? So when the government spends more than it collects, you get taxes over here and you're spending way more over here, it needs to borrow money to cover that difference, to cover that $1.5 trillion. So it does this by selling bonds. Bonds are like IOUs that the government says, hey, you borrow this, I promise to pay you back, and I'm going to pay you back with interest. But if there aren't enough buyers for these bonds, the government has to offer higher interest rates to attract more buyers. And the buyers go, oh, well, if you give me a higher interest rate, I think I might consider buying those bonds. So now the higher interest rates on government bonds can lead to higher interest rates on loans and mortgages. So this happens because when the government pays more interest, other lenders like banks and the other mortgage-backed securities, they also have to increase their interest rates to compete and attract buyers or borrowers. So here's the quick summary for you. The government deficit is spending more money than it makes. It's more money than the taxes they are collecting. The current deficit is around 1.5 trillion. Bonds and interest rates. If not enough people buy government bonds, interest rates go up, making mortgages more expensive. So this is what has been happening and has happened this week. The demand for these bonds has been weak. So they have had to offer higher interest rates, which has been keeping the mortgage rates up. So when you're talking trillions of dollars to be absorbed by that means you need a lot of buyers for them. And so we just don't have enough buyers to absorb all the IOUs the government is asking for. Thus, rates have remained elevated, and that is another reason we've not seen the mortgage rates drop, despite some weak economic data. Now, as far as home prices, guess what? They keep chugging along and going up. The US just recorded the highest median price level in history at 419,300. And that, while there are some factors that can skew this number because it's a median price, not average, there's some things that go into it, but that continues to increase. So right now, the higher rates appear to be the new norm, and consumers just are getting used to it. One other stat for you this week: the Fannie Mae home buying sentiment hit a new survey low, with 86% of consumers saying it's a bad time to buy. Don't buy a house, say 86% of the consumers. Now, there's a gentleman, a real nice gentleman, who is one of the richest individuals in the world and arguably the best investor of all time, Mr. Warren Buffett. Now, when the herd is going one way, he usually goes the other because he knows the herd will eventually follow him. They'll keep going. So I've talked about it before. Be the buffalo. The buffalo runs into the storm as opposed to the cow that tries to run away from the storm. The buffalo just goes right in, and the cow is just too slow to run away, and eventually it has to go with the herd. So those on the fence right now should highly consider taking a calculated risk and buy a home now before the herd comes in and follows and there aren't any homes left to buy. So if rates drop, those values are going to go up, that herd is going to follow, and it's going to be very difficult to find the home that you want. We have seen increased in inventory right now, so there are more homes to buy, which is good for the buyers that actually want to buy. So look at it as a long-term real estate investment, and those people sitting on the fence should definitely jump in. So I know that sometimes it's difficult for buyers to understand the financial numbers unless they can see them and truly understand them. So as always, feel free to reach out to me directly to get your buyers pre-approved and educated so they can make the right financial decision for them. You can also send them to my calendar link where I will go through a free CIA, credit income asset analysis, so they know exactly where they stand right now and what they need to do to get into a home now or into the future. So let's run their numbers. Hope you have an amazing, awesome weekend, and we'll see you next week. This is Gaylord out. Take care. Till next week. Bye-bye.